Well, Julian Assange is a Walkley Award-winning journalist. He's also been called an anti-American operative with blood on his hands.
Soon, Assange will find out whether he will be extradited to Sweden for questioning over sexual assault allegations. If that happens, he fears it will open the way for his ultimate extradition to America. So, should the Australian government be doing more to protect one of its citizens, or is it diplomatic suicide? Geoffrey Robertson QC is Julian Assange's barrister, and he joins us now from Geneva. Geoffrey, thank you very much for your time today.
Good morning. A very wet morning, I'm sorry to hear.
Yes, it very much is across the country. Now, do you think the Australian government is doing enough to help Julian Assange?
Well, look, every Australian who's up to his neck in trouble, and Julian Assange certainly is, has a right to consular assistance and has a right, as an Australian, for the government to help him to get a fair trial and a fair process. The government didn't help David Hicks. That was dreadful, but I've always found I've defended a lot of Australians, some of them up on charges, death penalty and so forth all around the world, and I go to the nearest Australian commission or embassy, and I've always found them quite helpful. They do what they can to ensure that they don't take a position, but they ensure fair process, and that is what Julian Assange will want. I'm in touch, of course, with our man in London, and I've spoken to the ambassador in Sweden. There has not been a great call yet, but the time is coming, and coming pretty soon, for the new foreign minister to make his mark.
Indeed. Now, we're talking about fair process here, Geoffrey. Now, leaving aside what may or may not happen in Sweden, should he be extradited, I mean, you would have to say that the process so far in the UK has been fair. So what...
has been exceptionally fair.
What assistance really has the Australian... Would you have liked to have seen the Australian government offer other than that?
No, the Australian government has done its bit. They've been quite supportive, and of course we haven't needed any assistance of any great note because, as you say, the process has been fair, although Julian Assange has spent 450 days under house arrest, yes, manor house arrest, if you like, but he's certainly been restricted. He can't get back to Australia. He still calls Australia home, and he wants to come home as soon as he can. And this is where Bob Carr could come in, because only a few weeks ago he described the Swedish procedure, particularly the secret trial that he may have to undergo, as an outrage by Australian standards, and he said Julian Assange would be better off in the Australian courts, and that's exactly what we want him to say to the Swedish government. We want him, if possible, to get an undertaking from the Swedish government that once the proceedings are over, and Julian Assange hasn't even been charged. The only issue is whether, he's there to be interviewed. He may be charged, and is very likely to be acquitted. If he is convicted, he won't go to prison, or unlikely to go to prison. If he does, it won't be for very long. The point is, the only reason that Julian Assange hasn't gone to Sweden voluntarily 15 months ago is that Sweden has a dreadful track record in handing people over without a court order to the CIA. And that's why we want an undertaking from the Swedish government that when they're finished with him, hopefully happily, but even not, that he should go back to Australia, be allowed to go back to Australia and face any extradition request from America yes, in the Australian courts.
Okay, so Geoffrey Robertson, can we just get you to clarify that? You said Julian Assange calls Australia home. He wants to come back and live in Australia.
Yes, of course, and he wants to, because we do, as Bob Carr pointed out, have fair trials and a fair legal process. It would be better, and it's not clear that America will seek his extradition. They have a grand jury sitting in Virginia, and of course a grand jury is a strange medieval procedure that Britain abolished centuries ago, but they've still got in America, where there's no judge, there's no defendant, there are simply 20 people off the street in the hands of the prosecutor, and
yes.
As American lawyers have a saying that a grand jury would indict a ham sandwich.
Right.
So there is a danger that he would be indicted by this grand jury for, and you mentioned the idea that WikiLeaks had blood on its hands. That's what everyone was saying. 15 months ago, Sarah Palin said he should be hunted down like bin Laden. Rush Limbaugh said he should die of lead poisoning from a bullet in the brain. This was the kind of thing 15 months ago. Not a single person has been physically harmed in those 15 months since. There hasn't been any physical reprisal. There's been a lot of embarrassment, but in fact, America has looked pretty good as a result of these cables. The ironic thing is that it's shown that American diplomats are principled and pragmatic, and it's done a lot to help people understand the way the world works. It's helped democracy in the Arab Spring and so on. So I think 15 months on, the Americans may still be a bit sore about Julian Assange, and the Pentagon certainly may want to teach him a lesson.
Geoffrey, could I interrupt for a second and ask you this? I mean, we can understand why governments might have a tender spot around WikiLeaks. Governments like to retain information rather than give it away. But we're getting many emails, even as we're having this interview, from members of the general public saying Assange is a traitor. Assange has blood on his hands, repeating that old claim. Why is it, do you think, that so many members of the public see his mission to make government more transparent as being so antithetical to democracy?
Well, I think, Andrew, there were a lot of statements 15 months ago predicting that people would be killed as a result of this release of cables. They didn't understand that none of these cables were top secret, and they're top secret if there are likely to be lethal reprisals. They were secret, but they were available to 2.5 million people, and by making them available, they're now, I mean, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, isn't it, Andrew? And no one has been hurt. There's been a lot of embarrassment, but, America has come quite well out of it, to such an extent that President Putin accused Julian Assange of being a CIA agent at one point, because he was, promoting the view of the State Department by these cables. But there's undoubtedly a view. The Pentagon wants to keep its secrets secret. Undoubtedly, some of the material that came out was desperately important. The killing of Reuters correspondents by the helicopter and so forth. It has added a lot. You can barely read an article today on foreign affairs in newspapers without some reference to a WikiLeaks cable.
Geoffrey, we're about to lose our satellite, unfortunately, so we're going to have to leave the interview there. But thank you so much for joining us from Geneva this morning, or this evening in your case. And
this evening, it's very late.
Indeed.
Thank you.
Break a leg for the upcoming weeks.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Andrew.
Yes, it's very interesting, the reaction that we are receiving. People are saying he deserves no assistance because he's a traitor.
If I might say one thing, I don't think Julian Assange has helped his own cause in the court of public opinion by the way he has carried himself.
His demeanour.
There's a certain kind of arrogance that
there is no doubt
through.
about that.
But I wonder, though, because of that, that's why he's been able to do what he has done, to be sort of such a whistleblower, to sort of think, well, you know what, I don't care about the consequences.
Completely brave and not worry at all what people think.
And you know what? The Australian Federal Police has put together a dossier on Julian Assange and the actions he has taken with WikiLeaks, and they've come to the conclusion that he has broken no Australian law. And in fact, he probably hasn't broken any American laws either in what he has done at WikiLeaks. So I think it's probably a bit much to be calling him a traitor. And even if he were a traitor, the thing about paying your taxes as an Australian citizen is that you are then you know, you can call upon
the
the protections of Australia when you get into trouble overseas. I mean, you know, Chappelle Corby, you know, Jock Palfreyman in Bulgaria, Nguyen Tong Van, you know, the drug smuggler in Singapore. Many people who've admitted to crimes. They've got a lot of help from the Australian government, you know.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's an extraordinary story, this one.
Yeah.
I mean, when you even just the aspect of what Sweden is accusing him of trying to extradite him, well, that is in itself extraordinary.
That's a different sort of story altogether, isn't it?
Like a Swedish novel.
Yes.
Indeed. One other thing, Assange, before you go calling him a traitor, he spent a couple of years helping Victoria Police crack child pedophile rings online, you know, and did that out of the goodness of his heart. So maybe he's not all bad. Interesting to see what happens in Sweden. Who knows what the circumstances of that were.
Let us know your thoughts.